Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Darren Smith along with Steve Walls, and we'd like to welcome you to again. Now, this is our home opener, so
Yeah.
another season once again of our pregame cheat sheet. We're live from inside the Arrowhead press box here, of course, where the Kansas City Chiefs are taking on. I guess we have to give them the proper respect, but the defending Super Bowl champion
Hmm.
Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl rematch that took place just about 6, 7 months ago down in New Orleans. So, Steve, coming into today's game. You were in Brazil last week when they played. The Eagles are coming off of an opening night win against the Dallas Cowboys.
Hmm.
Close win. Chiefs, of course, fell 27-21 to the Los Angeles Chargers. Coming into this game, there's a lot of questions that you and I both had on where they will be getting the points at. They're going to be without Xavier Worthy. Of course, they're without Rasheed Rice for the first 6 weeks of the season. How does this team, in our initial conversation right now, bounce back facing the world champions?
And I guess you would have to have a short memory. You're coming off of a trip to Brazil, like you said, and what the message was after the game from both Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is like, hey, we lack energy. It's like, how do you lose energy when it's the first game of the season? Granted, you may be in another country, but it's still the first game of the season. You've been waiting to hit that thud on the pads, hit somebody else other than
And
yourselves.
you've had 7 months.
And you're coming off of you want to. I heard Dave Chappelle say this. I think it's a Big Sean album or something. It's kind of like when you play bad or you have a bad show, you got to get that stink off you, and that's what they. It seems like you should have some energy because you want to get the stink off from the Super Bowl loss.
Yeah.
So today, you're gonna be at home. You're gonna have with Gennaro Wilson's gonna be doing the national
Oh yeah.
anthem. So this should be a home game where you're coming in with nothing but all the energy that you can.
The thing is, in this game, there's no excuses.
Hmm.
Again, kickoff's at 3:25. It is the national game of the week, and you can watch it on Fox, your local Fox stations. And like you said, Andy Reid in the presser after the game said that they came out flat. That's a coaching deal.
Yeah.
Again, it's still kind of questions. How did you come
No,
out
but
flat?
I was talking to Wanye Morris earlier this week, and he was just like, I asked, what did they do while they got to Brazil on Wednesday? They
Wednesday
had
night, yeah.
practice on Thursday morning, and then they sat in the hotel from Thursday to game time,
Yeah.
or to when they had to leave for the game. So you're sitting in a hotel for almost a day and a half. It's like, I can see how you could, possibly not have as much energy as you should because you got to remember most of the games that are in the country are always in the middle of the season,
Hmm.
and now you're starting the season, so that's a little different.
And they're also mid-afternoon as well
Yeah, yeah.
versus 9 o'clock at night.
9 o'clock at night, you're 2 hours ahead, and I'm not giving excuses,
No.
but it's just the facts are what they are, and so that's what he said. And I'm like,
But you know how we say the other team had to play in that same
true,
environment.
true, and they got there even a day early, so they have to believe they got there Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, they were coming from a further distance, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
When we look at this particular matchup, again, the Eagles and the Chiefs. First thing you think about, you think back to the Super Bowl and how that game played
Mhm.
itself out. If I remember correctly, I can't remember if they blitzed at all, but I do know that that defensive line for the Eagles, which included Jalen Carter, who didn't play in the first week of the season, who will play today. He served his ex facto suspension last week in the home opener.
Yeah.
But how do you think the Chiefs take on this pressure from the defensive line? I will say, from the first game, Josh Simmons did very well.
Yeah, it is.
I'd give him a B minus. He had a couple of rookie errors, with the false start and a holding call. But all things being equal, you know, first game out, first time out. I thought he looked well and showed that he can block and protect when necessary.
Yeah, I think if the announcer isn't saying your name when you're an offensive lineman,
Right.
that's a good thing. However, there was one person who had their name called a lot, and that was Jawan Taylor. Something that we've become used to, and I think that you could kind of see that the team is kind of growing tired of it as well. You got the glimpse of Travis Kelsey. He was kind of he headbutting
Was
a
it
little
limping?
bit. Yeah, yeah, and so I think that just kind of shows you that they're growing tired of it. You've gotten your honeymoon stage is gone. And now it's like, all right, dude, come on, man. You see where we ended up last year. We need you to come through this year.
Uh, just a little pushback. Now, and the reason why I say just a little pushback is because He's been doing it the last 2 years,
Mhm.
and it didn't, they didn't really seem to address it as we thought that they would. I think because of how the game played itself out, and
Yeah,
those penalties were drive killers.
right. True.
I think that's what made it worse because sometimes it's not a matter of you getting a penalty; it's a matter of
When it is.
when it takes place.
Yeah.
And both of those, I mean, he had 4 penalties in that game, and the fact that you had two on those drives, it just stalled the drive out when the Chiefs were trying to build momentum to either get into the end zone or take the lead, and they couldn't because of that situation, and it became magnified,
Of course.
because one of what we saw initially in the Super Bowl with the offensive line, but also you go back to Tampa Bay when that offensive line, but then that was more so by injuries that was decimated where you couldn't protect Mahomes. And it's
Right.
like they're paying you so
A
much.
lot of
Like
money.
you are the second highest paid player on the team besides Mahomes. You can't be making those kind of mistakes. And I talked to Jawan this week, posted it online and asked him, like we cool and all, but bro, you got too many penalties. Like, do you feel like you're being targeted, or why are you getting so many penalties? And
Hmm.
he addressed it, and he answered the question. Matt Nagy, of course, the next day said that it has to stop. My pushback would have been, or else what?
Right. Right.
That's I mean, because granted he had issues with his knee this summer and was drainage and stuff. And you brought in Jalen Moore from San Francisco, so
Hmm.
you would have thought that would have been an opportunity to see what he could do at right tackle. To give him a little bit more time to rest and make sure that knee is taken care of. The fact that we didn't see Jalen makes me question: is he ready? Is he ready to go? What I'm saying, to spell Jawan in case he gets benched or injured.
And that's interesting. You brought that. That's a good point. That you have Jalen and Andy Reid is kind of he's in when you look at offensive line, he was an offensive lineman, so
Mm.
he doesn't give them much grace at all. And you would see, him pull them out, especially Patrick Mahomes would, say something, and they'll give him the axe pretty quickly. And so the fact that they did not let me further know that, Jalen wasn't ready.
Well, that too, but also Patrick gets on when they're rookies. I mean, because like he did with Wanye and did with Kingsley over the last, he doesn't do that with veterans.
Uh,
No, well, on the offensive line, he hasn't.
I would okay. I would say you still got Jawan Taylor, and I think when I saw some of the camera angles and it looked at you said it said the same thing or something like that. Where you like read his lips or
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes' lips, but I feel like he's just got to play better. If you're going to be out there, and I mean, we'll see today. Will they start Jawan? What do you think?
Oh, I think he
You
starts.
think he start? Okay. All right. I'm just
Look, man, people got to send me about it, but he's making too much money to be benched. I mean, again, you had an opportunity to bench him throughout the game when it was killing you,
to and replace him with who?
Jalen or someone. No, again, but okay, we also saw he was practicing with the first team all week too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay.
again,
Yeah.
that's why I don't see that happening. But we'll get back to that. Of
Hmm.
course, coming out of the Brazil game, we saw Travis Kelsey with a touchdown catch, but we also saw Hollywood Brown, step up in the
He did.
absence
Led
of
our
Xavier,
receivers.
in the absence of Xavier Worthy. What do you think of how those players stepped up? He and Tycon Thornton.
I think Taekwon is going to be a threat, a deep threat downfield, right? I think when you look at how he played in preseason, how we were up at camp, watched him, and they were working on that, and that's one of the things that Patrick Mahomes has been wanting to get more to is the deep ball. Right, I
Yeah.
think Tyquan Thornton has the speed. He's a taller receiver. Kind of reminds me of Demarcus Robinson a little bit, with his speed and the way that he's able to go up and get the ball. And we saw that they tried it two more times before they actually completed that pass. And I feel like that's one of the things that he's going to be able to do is help stretch the field.
Kansas City, of course, will be taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoffs at 3:25 on your local Fox stations, and of course 3:25 local time here in Kansas City. Super Bowl defending champions, the Philadelphia Eagles come in. Two touchdown runs for Jalen Hurts last week against the Dallas
Mm.
Cowboys. A touchdown run by Saquon Barkley. Barkley and that offense ran roughshod over the Chiefs. what do you feel like they can do with the defense that we saw in Brazil? Now, if
Mm,
the defense that we saw in Brazil, in my opinion, if that defense shows up, which was 2018 reminiscent,
yeah.
it could be an ugly long day for Kansas City. But again, Spags, you know, he was accountable to how the defense looked and said that they did make adjustments. It was just it happened to be much later than they would have hoped it took place against the Chargers. But with what we saw the first game of the season with Philly and what Philly displayed in the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
how can this Chiefs defense defend against them this time around?
I mean, all those guys were here. I think they're going to get their shot at a second opportunity, right? Like I think today is one of those like a get back type game, and
But there's no Justin Reed to set
there's
to set the.
exactly, and I do feel as though you need that solid guy defensively on the back end, and if you remember 2018, 2019, and then going forward, they had Tyrann Mathieu, who's actually beating the drum today here at Arrowhead
Yeah.
Stadium. And then it goes from Tyrann, who's the veteran, the savvy veteran, who came in here and kind of changed the culture, helped change the culture. And then you go to Justin Reed, who's Tyrann Mathieu-esque,
Yeah.
and really aggressive. And now it's like you don't have either one of those guys, and it's head scratching because we love the young dudes, but
Yeah.
they've got to step up. And it's you're coming to a Super Bowl team that they don't know anything but going to the Super Bowl. Being young, you just don't know. And I feel like now it's kind of you're on that back end, and it's like, all right, we don't have that Justin Reed, the leader back
You
there.
know, it's funny you say that. And shout out to everyone that's tuning in across the platform. We thank you. Mama, I see you getting your text message. Hello, shout out to you as well. Shout out to Mama Walls as well. Um, when we look at what we saw defensively, and you talk about Justin, one of the things that when you mention that I've noticed, these younger players, Trent's made a name for himself just by his play on the outside, but
Hmm.
when we brought in Justin Reed was known as a thumper.
Yeah,
Like he said he set he set it out there.
yeah.
We we have not seen that from from a Jay Nix or some of these other younger players
Hmm.
that saying we need them to deliver a welcome to the NFL type play, hit or some saying to impose their will on
Yeah.
the defense. And when we talk about Justin, that's something that he always did. He showed the physicality. That's something that we did not see in the game against the Chargers. That I'm hoping again because they're going to want to run the football,
Hmm.
and the Chiefs, of course, are going to try to stop the run and
Yeah,
force Jalen Hurts to beat you throwing the football. But I think the only way that you do that is you've got to impose your will early on and make some big hits to start
yeah.
the game off.
And speaking of that game plan of stopping Jalen Hurts, I'm stopping Saquon Barkley first. I
Yeah,
want to ask you is like, do you feel like that what they did in the Super Bowl can actually work today? Because you got to remember when they stopped Saquon Barkley, they did, and Jalen Hurts pretty much did what he wanted. I mean, he found AJ Brown, he found some of their Dallas Goddard. And I know he's not playing today, but some of their other target other weapons that they have, and so. You got the same cornerbacks minus Justin Reed. So how are they able to do it? I mean, you have Christian Fulton out there, which he didn't show me much last week. But will they be able to? Because they didn't target
and they're talking Devontae Smith
for Devontae Smith
or AJ,
or a last
which
week against Dallas.
which was interesting because of the amount of points that they scored. But
Yeah.
they and Saquon really didn't have a great game. I mean,
Hmm.
he had a few runs, and of course he had a touchdown, but it was more
Jalen
so
kept
Jalen.
him in that game.
That's what I'm saying. Jalen
Yeah.
with his legs and stuff. And so, but again, I think it's going to behoove Kansas City to start the game off and be physical. I mean, because that again is something that we did not see.
Yeah.
Because the Chargers are not really. I mean, they want to establish the run, but last week's game was more of a offensive virus. I mean, they made Keenan Allen turn back the hands of time,
Yeah.
and
They
that's
did.
that's something that we can't afford to have happen if you're a Chiefs fan, hoping that this team wins. And so
And it's kind of like you don't want that perfect storm to happen where you're not getting after the quarterback and you're getting beat deep.
one of the things that I know we talked about on our Red Hour show that we did not get a really chance to see is, and we talked about it. We talked about it on the pregame show last week that we've got to see, with the big contract that George Karlaftis got in the offseason,
Mhm.
and to an extent, and to a man, Chris Jones as well. You know, it all it all starts up in front. And when you asked about the X factor. I told you my X factor on the offense was going to be
Hmm.
Patrick and not Patrick, but Coach Reed and Nagy, and on defense was going to be the defensive line. We did not see that
Yeah,
at all, and so I think and it's always going to start up front at the line of scrimmage.
yeah,
But Chris Jones talked about this week on how you know they want, like you said, some get back, and they expect to be energized. And look, if you come out flat in front of your home crowd, where you got at least 65,000 of your own fans versus who might
yeah.
be here for Philly, you know
There's a lot of Eagles fans here.
that's a problem within itself. And so if Andy Reid allows his team to come out flat and they don't set the tone, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you got to strike first. I mean, when I looked at it last week, it's like they had no rhythm. You weren't able to get into a groove, and I feel like a lot of that. And Patrick Mahomes kind of talked about it. Xavier Worthy, when he went down, he was asked, what changed when he went down. He was like, well, Xavier is in a lot of our stuff and a lot of the scheme and all that. However, it's always next man up, but I don't feel like they had a next man.
Well, interesting. And to your point, my pushback even to that was, okay, Xavier's not Jamar Chase.
No, of
Like,
course.
like, like, like he's not getting 15 targets,
Yeah.
and and the
But
focus
but
of the
but
offense.
if I'm pushing back on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
part of it, I would say that Andy Reid has a lot of the little gadget plays and things like that. And if you have to put someone else in that, it moves things around.
Yeah,
So whereas it's like, all right, well, I'm used to Xavier being here, or he's pulling when Xavier Worthy's on the field, the defense has to know where he is.
I get that. But my only pushback is that because he's still lighting the back,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, running him, I know they be trying to do trick plays running. He's not bulking up to where he can take those time. I mean, we just saw.
Well, the defense can play differently if you don't have Xavier Worthy out there, and let's just say you're and no shade to Nico Remigio, but
Yeah,
if you exchange him from Nico, it's like all right, we can play more, we can do some different things on the defensive side of the ball. Whereas if Xavier is out there, we've got to figure out okay, are we taking out we taking out the top away, or what are we doing? So I think him not being out there has a lot of effect on what the defense is going, and it also has a lot of effect on Patrick Mahomes too.
yeah. Kansas City, of course, is an underdog under Patrick Mahomes at home. Only the second time in his
Mm.
career. Of course, another time was when they were underdogs to the Buffalo Bills. Might have been in the playoffs, and of course, we saw how that turned out,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
where Mahomes is and the offense won that game. Steve, we talk about this. We talked about it on our Red Hour show. The points. Where are the points going to come from?
Yeah, man. It's going to have to be a Travis Kelsey step up game. I think it's going to have to be a running back game. And I've been saying this a little bit, and people kind of gave me the side eye when I said this. It's going to be an Andy Reid kind of gimmicky type game. If you know Andy Reid and you know when he doesn't have,
Will they stay with the run? Is the big question. Or will they even establish the run?
it's going to have to be it's going to have to be one of those games where if you remember back in 2017 or 2018, Kareem Hunt when he went for was it over like 200 yards or something crazy like against New England.
That was 2017. That was the
2017.
first game.
It's got to be one. If you're going to go with the run, it's going to be one of those type games where one of these running backs has. And I know you're like, oh, Steve,
No,
no,
no, no,
I
no,
don't
no,
think
no,
it's
no.
going.
It's not that. It's just that Alex Smith was the quarterback and not Mahomes.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So if it's going to be that, then they're going to have some type of a breakout, and we're going to have to see it early.
All right, kickoff is in about 20 minutes. Steve, let's get your X factor on offense for today's game.
Man, I think it's going to have to be Patrick Mahomes. I really do. The reason I say that is because he's the leader. Last week,
Wasn't it your X factor last week?
no, it was my X factor last week was it may have been.
It was.
It may have been. I mean, well, I can have
Okay,
same
and
same,
I
same. But here's the thing, and it was almost came to fruition last week
yeah.
because and if you're taking Patrick Mahomes any type touchdown, I would take that today
Mm,
because we asked where the points going to come from. I feel like
that's
he's going to use his legs a lot, and he used his legs a lot against the Eagles in the Super Bowl.
yeah.
So if they play him the kind of the same way, then you're saying, okay, if I'm the Eagles defense, who do you
Who's
need to take
playing?
away? You've got to take away of Travis Kelsey and who else? Like, so I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes that has to show his legs off a little bit.
All
Now,
right.
if you're going to win this game, he can't be the leading rusher.
You better not be.
So my X factor would be Pat.
Okay, so since you're gonna watch rinse repeat, I'll do the same.
Mm,
Andy Reid and Matt Nagy, because again, got to figure out a way to put points on the board.
okay.
And so, what type of adjustments are you going to make? Are you going to stick with the run? And if it, because remember in the Super Bowl they didn't even really attempt to run, in the game, which after the opening series where they had the ball and Kelsey dropped it on third down and they ended up kicking the ball. It's like they didn't try to run the football.
But to that point though, the offensive line was getting beat up. They didn't even they had no push on the offensive line. So how are you going to create the lane to run?
But again, they 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 had brought in the guy from Arizona, and while they had Tooney there at left tackle, you could have moved him back over. I'm just saying they had moves to make, but they decided to go against it. So
Yeah.
so that's on them. But again, I want to see how you going to put points on the board. What type of plays are you going? What type of scheme and stuff are you going to do that's gonna allow this team and put this team in position to put points on the board for Patrick,
Yeah.
but also make sure that you protect Patrick from himself
Yeah.
because if like you said, he should not be our leading rusher. Um, X factor for you on defense.
Hmm. It's got to be the secondary. I think if they're gonna we know what the Chiefs' game plan is gonna be. It's gonna take away Saquon Barkley. So if that's the case and that's what they're going with, the secondary has to step up and make sure that no penalties downfield. Shamari Connor has to step up. You got to have Christian Fulton on the other side. We know what Trent's going to do. But I really feel like the secondary
And
has
he was
to
looking like
has
a
to be.
challenge when I talked to him this week. He said
Yeah, they have to step up. And a part of me kind of wanted to say Nick Bolton and the linebackers, because Nick didn't have the best game last week to me.
he never has a good
Um,
game of coverage.
yeah, so a part of me wants to say it, but I'm going to go with the secondary.
I've got to go. And it might be a repeat of last week as well, but everything for me still had to start up front with Chris Jones and Cole Optus in them because it's like I got to see what kind of pressure you put either on that offensive line or you getting to the Jalen Hurts because again
Hmm.
maybe you get to Jalen Hurts and rock him and cause some turnovers like that with the pressure what I'm saying to where you don't give him time to get the ball out to one of the receivers. So for me, that's my X factor is going to be because I've got to me, they need to show up, especially after how last week's game ended. So for me, I need to see the get back. I need them seeing, I need to
Yeah.
see, how they adjust and how they bounce back from last week's performance.
Okay.
All right. So before we get out of here, we do want to thank our sponsors. For us, Gates Barbecue, along with for my stylist, Todd's Clothiers and Taylor Suits, located two locations, one out at the Legends and the other, of course, out at War Parkway Mall, and of course, Steve's stylist.
For myself, Diller is on the road, so make sure you go check out my guy Herman in the men's department. He'll take care of you. Go out there and just go say hi. Go say hi. See what they have. Just see what
Yeah,
they have.
spend that gas money to go say that. Now, when we give you our picks, we do want to remind you we will be bringing you Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes post game coverage right here along our social media channels. Follow Steve at Steve Walls KC. Follow me at Darren Smith NFL. We'll also bring you our post game commentary after the game as well from the field. And make sure that you join us tomorrow night, 6:30 from the Red Hour. For the Red Hour, 6:30, 7:30, and then of course Steve and I will be in New York or New Jersey next weekend for Sunday Night Football, where the Chiefs will be taking on the New York Giants, and of course we'll bring you our pregame show. I think it's going to be about 7:30 their time, 6:30 here. Steve, who you got? What's your score for the game?
Oh, I've got 24-17 Chiefs. 24-17 Chiefs. This and I people are like, oh well, man, you always pick the Chiefs. Well, Patrick Mahomes has never lost 3 games in a row, and depending on if you look for the following year
No,
or
no,
previous
he's
year, or
never.
so that would be they lost the Eagles, and then in Super Bowl, and then they lost last week. So this would be 3 if they lose. But
Yeah,
I don't feel like that this is the one that they're gonna lose, man. I just don't see it.
it's funny. Of course, if you watch the Red Hour, you know that I initially picked Philly in that game.
Yeah.
And then I had to catch myself because I've never picked against the Chiefs because for real, the Chiefs have been like the most talented team on the field. I think it's a wash in today's game when it comes to talent. So I think it's going to come down to coaching. And so, but for me, I do have Kansas City winning 21-17, though I'm still wrestling in my mind on how they put up those 21 points.
Mm.
But again, if anybody can do it, it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And again, with a home crowd like this, home opener, you know, they're gonna they're gonna put up a lot of noise and gonna do whatever they can to help be the 12th man, to help this team win. So that's what I got. I got 21-17 Kansas
Okay.
City.
All right.
All right, so I want to thank you all very much for joining us. Again, be sure to tune in. Post game, we'll bring you Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and anyone else at the podium. And then, of course, we'll be interviewing players in the locker room after the game. So for Steve Walls, follow him at Steve Walls KC. I'm Darren Smith at Darren Smith NFL. We want to thank you so much for the pregame cheat sheet. Join us next week when we're in New Jersey for Sunday Night Football, Chiefs against the Giants. Later.